like to talk about the HST and why I feel that we would be better off keeping it than trying to turn back the clock. I should explain right away that I am not a business owner or operator, never have been. I don't belong to a political party, and never have. I'm just a BC voter. But to begin, I think we must recognize there are two completely separate issues involved here. One is, were we given the straight goods by the Liberals when they said HST was not on their radar when they had the last election? The second item is the combined HST preferable to the separate GST and PST? Many people want to combine and blur these two issues together in making up their minds about the HST, but I think it's critical that BC voters see them as being separate and deal with them separately. They are related, but they are not linked. I don't know whether Liberals withheld critical information. Quite honestly, it doesn't matter to me. It's because that point is interesting, but it's irrelevant. Rather, I think we have to vote the HST in or out based on its merits and nothing more. Voting against the HST because we have a hate-on for the Liberals is shooting ourselves in the foot. If we're mad at the Liberals, then vote them out at the next election, but don't let that carry over into your evaluation of whether the HST is good or bad. There are several reasons why I will be voting for the HST. The HST is easier for businesses to administer, therefore it reduces their overhead, therefore it reduces their expenses, it encourages businesses to locate in BC, and that brings jobs to BC or retains them here. And why should the average British Columbian care about that? Because governments do not create jobs. They never have, they never will. They do, however, have a critical role in creating business-friendly opportunities in their jurisdictions, so businesses will want to locate here. That brings jobs to BC and should be of critical concern to voters. In fact, I've seen a couple of articles from business people in Ontario stating that they're hoping that British Columbians will vote down the HST because they're hoping on getting that business there. I heard one caller in the radio complain that he wanted the PST back and he didn't care about jobs going to Ontario. However, if it was his job going to Ontario, I think he may reconsider. Another point in favor is that there are some personal financial benefits to the HST which should compensate for any of the costs. For one thing, the personal provincial deduction in our tax was to have increased from about $9,400 to $11,000, which for high income earners would mean a significant tax rebate at the end of the year. Now, low income earners wouldn't be able to benefit from that, but for them there is a $230 cash rebate per person per year. It doesn't matter if you didn't pay any tax at all, you're still eligible for a $230 cash rebate per year. And between these two things, I think they would go a long way to compensating for any of the extra taxes to be paid under the HST versus the earlier tax regime. There are some valid concerns about the HST. The way it's supposed to work is that companies no longer have to pay PST on their raw inputs, which means that they are able to pass these savings on to the final price. Now, will they do this? I expect some won't. I expect most will. But I take you back to 1991 when the GST was introduced, and there were a lot of people who were claiming that the companies would simply pocket the savings and we would pay the same price plus the GST, and everything was going to cost us more. If you're finding some companies are not passing the savings through, then exercise your rights as a consumer and go somewhere else. I think it's only fair that we talk about some of the half-truths that have also been floating around. One claim was that the cost of everything, including groceries, rent, dry goods, hardware, etc., were all going to be going up. But I think for people who have heard that sort of thing, they should look at the internet and review some of the web pages that talk about it. For one thing, groceries and rent were not tax subject to tax before, they're not subject to tax now. No change. A lot of dry goods were subject to a 5% plus 7% tax regime before. Now they're subject to 12%. No change. There will be some things like services where there are no raw materials going in, so there are no savings, PST savings to be passed along, and in fact those and things like restaurant meals will be more expensive, but that's what the rebates are all about, to try to reduce that expense. I would like to see the HST tweaked so that educational materials and fitness materials are not taxed, because we want people to do these things. We don't want to discourage them. Whether that change will take place, I'm not sure, but I don't see any reason why the HST could not be tweaked to encourage those activities. Now, I've also heard complaints that the HST simply shifts the tax burden from the business to the consumer. But then that was the same argument made with the GST, and in fact it turned out that, well, it was true, it did shift the tax burden, but since the price of the goods went down, the net effect was zero. What happens if we do decide to shoot ourselves in the foot and vote down the HST? Among the downsides are that the roughly $1,600 increased personal provincial tax exemption is history. The $230 annual personal rebate is history. Businesses have to rejig their systems to start collecting PST and GST again. That's going to cost them money. They're not going to swallow it. Our prices will go up to compensate for that. We have to re-implement an expensive government bureaucracy to start collecting those taxes again. That's going to cost money. And BCers will have to pay back $1.6 billion to Ottawa to compensate for the amount that they gave us to help implement the HST in the first place. And I don't really see that they are going to feel any particular reason to forgive that advance. So that's going to be coming out of our pockets as well. I have heard some people saying, well, the government should pay that. Well, guess where the government gets its money, folks? Anyway, and then finally, some businesses will likely pack up and go to Ontario. Their gain, our loss. But isn't there an upside to voting down the HST? Well, yes, I suppose there is. You can say, boy, we sure showed you a thing or two to the Liberals. However, quite honestly, that doesn't give me much comfort.